And so I think in that spirit, one of the things we've been doing as part of this budget process is collecting together those capital priorities from each school and creating a sort of priorities list for the district to try and focus what we need, what we think we need immediately. So for FY16, and I've got the slides on this for today, is what are our top priorities for FY16 in terms of capital. So I'm hoping that will help to feed into that process that town administrators talking about.
I just wanted to make one more comment about the cameras, just to bring it back to only the middle school. This is the first time that since the camera system was installed in 2005 that there's been a complete review of the cameras in the building in terms of which ones are functioning and which ones aren't. So I'm saying we have made great progress in terms of at least addressing it. Michael, can we go to the last slide? I think Mr. Flaherty is interested in perhaps moving toward.
Just
Okay.
I don't want to rush, but
No, that's okay, because the very last slide. I know you love that one, Michael.
you left that one.
So the staffing in terms of minimal services, I just wanted to entertain any questions about this, but these are some concerns that I have about going into the next school year. Asking for a reading teacher, I'm not really seeing any kind of progress or benefit from reading programs per se, and I just think it's unconscionable that we would have kids that are leaving the middle school that are non-readers. And so I'm asking us, now that we are able to assess with the degree of sophistication that we can, that I want to identify non-readers at the middle school and be able to schedule those kids in for direct reading instruction as a regular part of their day.
Sorry, Mr. Minkle, Mr. Worthy?
It ought to be, they ought not to leave the elementary school.
That's what I'm working on that.
Okay, but I'm just...
I thought that as you said it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And maybe just excessive to say non-readers, but to improve on their reading skills, so that if they're significantly below grade level, we can address that as well. Interventionists, and again, this is about going back to the data that we now have, is being able to target kids for specific instruction to address specific needs. And asking for part-time interventionists, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. They wouldn't be necessarily full-time employees. We have a computer lab, and we also, again, thanks to the superintendent and the tech department, have Chromeboxes set up in what used to be our library, which I think ultimately we want to make our media center, and maybe Mr. O'Farrell had an idea about turning it into a place that kids could come and maybe relax a little bit, but again, we're not seeing it as a library per se anymore, but what we lack in that space is a person to pull it together and to help teachers and kids to maximize the use of the equipment. And the last thing on the list is we're increasing class size by the kids coming into the 5th grade by 24 students, according to Mrs. Siemens. And if that happens, then that will affect our class size. And I'm asking for a teacher to address that extra 24 kids.
Actually, I have a question. If you guys don't mind. All right. And since you brought that up with the class sizes in the 5th grade, incoming 5th grade, to the superintendent, we met as a budget advisory committee, and we've had now the middle school principal and the high school principal, and we had a vastly different conversation at our meeting about that. Are we going to discuss that at all?
I think that would be appropriate.
Oh, at this time?
I think that, yes, I do.
Okay, well, let's do that.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, part of our discussion has been how do we relieve the pressure at the middle school, because right now we're about 800 plus students. The high school is approximately 550 students. And so when you look at the needs of the high school, when you look at the needs of the middle school, part of our discussion has been how do we balance, how do we make sure that we've maximized and we're making the most efficiencies for our staff and provide a quality educational program for our students. What we're looking at is moving our 8th grade students to the high school. So it'd be an 8 through 12 building. Our middle school would then be a 5 through 7. And I would turn it over to Mr. Minkle just to elaborate a little bit more on what the middle school would look like and what that would mean at the middle school.
So one of the things that the superintendent posed to me was, what would you do with the space that you have left over? And I think part of what I want, to be out there is that we have occupational therapists in a building that's a district person. We have a vision specialist. We have a speech and language specialist. We have the entire district's tech department in the middle school. We have in the summer we have about 300 kids that are being serviced through the Beyond School Time Care program. We have a full summer school contingent of kids that need to attend summer school because of our policy on kids that have mandatory summer school. So in other words, we don't have a lot of extra space. We have testing being done for kids for occupational therapy. They have to find a space. They have to find hallways. Sometimes the testing is being done simultaneously. We have a team chair in our building that's a district person. So in other words, underneath the middle school roof, we have a lot going on that's not just middle school. And I think that we could certainly make really good use of that space to those people. In the tech department, we had 6 people in one room. And I think certainly we opened up another room just out of sympathy for their situation. We have the person that's overseeing Power School for the district that was sitting in that room, along with Krista Hand and people that were trying to address the tech needs of the district. The other thing is I have my vision for next year, which is not part of this discussion, but we have a home ec room in the middle school that I would love to use for home ec. But right now we have a learning center situation in that room, actually it's ASD room. I would like to expand the building so that we have woodworking back in the middle school during the school day, and I could get into a lot of other ideas that I have and to make really great use of that space to enhance the curriculum offerings that we have for our kids. And 8th grade moving from the middle school would accomplish that. And I know that the superintendent, one of the things that she has said to me repeatedly is think outside of the box. And I could absolutely make great use of this space to give a different offerings, a more complete education to kids if I had the space. And basically we took on the 5th grade. It was a 25% increase. And I'm advocating for the middle school right now, but we did not get the extra support to complement that or to address it. So,
Mrs. Vugan.
No, I just want to make a comment that I appreciate the discussion. I do wish the discussion started while Scott was here to be able to hear from the high school's perspective and also from the middle school, because it gives us a nice flow of what challenges we might face, what are the costs associated, all of that. So we might need to back up so then we can have the same conversation with principals.
And that's why I wanted to sort of nip it, I didn't know when we were going to start discussing that, and I'm like, we've had Scott now, his Dan, and I'm like, I don't know if there was going to be something at the end of the day or what, but I just want to make sure that we had someone here, Mrs. Whiteside.
It's a fascinating idea because it actually gives you more square footage per person, including your staff and everything else. My one concern would be the educational impact of, I used to hate 9th graders for all the right reasons. I would truly detest 8th graders. I would not be civilized. From the
that's not what I used to hear. Kids loved your class.
Those were Those were 10th graders who loved it.
No, but I'm being serious.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of educationally, without going in, is this something that is palatable, desirable? Yes or no?
Certainly, we're looking at it. We think that we need to explore all our options. And it's interesting you brought up the square footage because we've been looking at that, and I think right now the high school has 399 square feet per student, and the middle school has
179.
Yeah, that's crazy.
so there's quite a distinct difference in the square footage. Granted, the high schools traditionally have had more square footage, but in our economic times, I think we would be amiss if we didn't explore all options.
Mr. Sweat?
I just need to say that I am uncomfortable looking at these slides. I'm not pretending to be an educator. You may need these teachers, but given the prior data, it just fundamentally seems to me that the elementary schools need to step up to the plate and give you better prepared students. And these are Band-Aids on a problem that I understand you need the Band-Aids, but I want to get rid of the need for the Band-Aids before they even get to you. And would be very troubled to approve these kinds of dollars where we have, it just seems to me the higher priority is other things that we are looking. And I know that doesn't help you right now, but candidly, this just doesn't work for me.
Just,
Another way of saying it is, I want these two people to say, we are maximizing the productivity of the people we've already got in the building with scheduling, whatever, all the things I know nothing about, before I would add one more teacher to the middle and high school.
So Jeff, may I respond, Dr. Shaffer?
yeah,
All right, so and I hear what you're saying, Jeff, but my task is to find the students where they are and to identify their needs.
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, and so when you say I can't sign off on this, so my task is to identify their needs, find them where they are, and to develop a strategy for addressing those needs. And I would also say that I've promised the staff at the middle school that we're going to get out of level 3. And that's part of, this has to be, to my mind, this has to be part of the conversation.
I hear you loud and clear, but it appears to me, and I felt this way for a long time, and maybe I haven't verbalized it, that the weakest link in our system is the elementary school.
I have no comment.
Mr. Lazarus?
Mr. Sweat is going to probably fall off his seat after hearing this, but I agree with you completely. For 20 years at the high school, we said the same thing. We said the same thing, that students were not coming into us academically prepared in 2 areas. Number 1, in their academics, and number 2, in their work ethic. And this doesn't start at the middle school. This starts way before that. We've said this, Mrs. Whiteside and I have said this to each other. And I agree with Mr. Sweat. This has got to start from the bottom and work its way up. Thank you.
Just before yourself, Ms. Whiteside. It's fundamental. I mean, obviously, thank you for you just bringing it up. I remember when my child was in the elementary school, and the progress he was making in reading, and it was said to me fundamentally that in 2nd grade, the students learn to read, and in third grade they read to learn. Right, that's 2nd and 3rd grade. That's not middle school. So what happens? So I mean, it absolutely needs to be addressed. Mrs. Whiteside.
Yeah, although I agree with you gentlemen, I also think that it would have been much fairer to all of the presenters to start with the grade schools, because that conversation then builds up. You're going backwards down from the best performing school with the least number of students. You're hammering a guy for being a bottleneck, and that's really not I'm going to stick up for the middle school, which is probably the first time in my life, but
I'm
it
glad this is being
absolutely,
recorded.
yeah, it absolutely starts in the primary grades. And I think that the reconfiguration from the superintendent, et cetera, you need to give it some time to percolate and become effective, but and I'm not suggesting that we spend any more money, but if you have a recognized problem area and you don't figure out how to at least give the guy some tools, then you are setting him up for failure, and then the people in the high school go nutcasey, or they leave.
I think we need to move on soon, but Dr. Shaver, did you have something?
I do. I just want to say, if you recall back to our proposals last year when we were having what we needed to move this district forward, we had placed on our wish list, so to speak, X number of specialists, reading math specialists, and we would fade them out during a period of time. Hence, we didn't have the override passed. We weren't able to put those interventionist or stopgap folks in. We've acknowledged this program that we need to have intervention at the middle school as well as the elementary. And it is our hope that if we can target the middle school and target the elementary over a period of several years, we can fade out at the middle school because we've addressed the needs of the students coming up. We have a group of middle school students that we've not been able to address their needs. We're doing a number of other pieces that are outside this to identify staffing issues, to identify efficiencies, because we understand we're working with a very limited budget, and to come to the town, to come to the school committee and say we need X number of dollars for additional staff is not feasible. And that's why we need to look and examine every possible option, which we're doing. What we're not prepared to do at this point is to say, if we do this, then we are willing to reduce X number of staff in other areas. Number one, we're not prepared with the information, but number two, it's too early in the budget process to share that information. We are looking at it, and we will bring that forward when it's appropriate.
Are we all set for the middle school?
Mr. Chair?
Oh, see you there. Okay, yes, go ahead, Ms. Vivian.
So I agree that we need to support existing students in the middle school while we allow the reconfiguration and other things that are happening in the elementary schools to percolate and to get going, to be able to start helping the feeder system into the middle school. The question that I had with some of the additions that you're adding here, and I think that what the superintendent said is that as we're taking a look at some of the increases, that we are taking a look at existing staff. And I don't think that you've seen this, but this was a document that Mr. McMillan and others kind of put together. And when I take a look at this, can I just ask, when we take a look at custodial staff, you have one more than the high school, or when I take a look at art, you have one, sometimes two more than some of the other, and also no music. Am I to take from, what? Not a teacher.
We do.
We
It
do.
just wasn't
We do.
recorded correctly.
Oh, it wasn't? Yeah. Okay. So, but am I, so from what I'm hearing is that as we're taking a look at some of the increases, whether it's level funded or whether it's adding slightly more things, that we're also taking a look at the way the staffing within each of the schools, and going back to Jeff's point, that we want to be as efficient as possible, so then you do get the increases or really the additional staffing aligned to where you actually need them.
Right.
That is 100% going to happen during this process.
Yes.
All right. We need to move along, but if it's really important, Mr. Sweat, go for it.
It's really important.
All right.
Well, do we get to determine that after?
Yes, you do. I am not sitting here feeling I have the moral, let alone the legal right, to say whether interventionists are needed at the middle school. What I am saying is the level of productivity at the middle school, in terms of the way the current resources are being used, appears to be too low, given the budget constraints that we have. So if the superintendent and the principal of the middle school decide, we want 2 literacy and 2 math interventionists, that's not for me to say, it's not a good idea. I'm just saying, find the dollars somewhere else so that you can have both. Because I don't get the right to allocate resources, but I do get to say the total package. And I think the total package, based on what I'm seeing today, is high enough, but I'm not saying how that should be allocated. I don't have that right, I don't want that right, but it does seem to me that that doesn't take anything away from the fact that I have never felt that you were a level 3 because of what was going on in that building. I always thought you were a level 3 because of the students you inherited.
Exactly.
And I still feel that way today.
I think it's a combination.
And you have better knowledge than I do, okay?
I think the evaluation system, if we have a conversation for another day, I would bear that out.
Fair enough, and I
Okay,
would
for another
probably
day.
for another day, and I would probably agree with that as well. Okay, and I appreciate what Dr. Swam is doing in the evaluation system as well.
You bet.
So all of this is good, but given the pie that we've got, I think we have to find a way to get that for you, but not by adding, by reallocating.
All right.
I know.
Dr. Shiva is going to have the last word on this.
This has never happened. You know, part of why we wanted to have a conversation with the committee and the administrators at the very beginning was to make sure that we had outlined our budget goals for this reason exactly. We need to be efficient, and we needed to establish some parameters that we're willing to operate under and live with. So there was a method to the madness of doing that, which will come into light as we move forward, just so everybody knows. Thank you, Mr. Flaherty.
You're very
I certainly
welcome.
appreciate it.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
All right, so thank you very much, I was going to say Dr. Mingle.
You can promote me if you'd like. Thank you.
Well, that's doctors.
How many staff would go with them?
That's something that we're looking at. Okay. What the middle school?
I'm just thinking of numbers.
Yeah, we would do that. We will move people.
Mr. Mingle,
We have to.
please go back and tell your staff that you did a phenomenal job.
Thank you. Happy holidays,
You
everybody.
too.
Same to you, Dan. Thank you.
That's correct.
Okay, we're about 12 minutes behind schedule here.
Mike, you're doing a good job staying us on. Yeah, really.
Yeah, all right.
Because I had great concerns about,
Yeah. Well, for certain people, I mean. Welcome.
Thank you.
Right.
Mike's getting it all ready, and you just tell him when to press next, and we'll follow along.
Okay. So next. So the slide shows our enrollment for each program, the Wareham Cooperative School and West Academy. And this was done the end of November. Right now, we're having registration for our PM2 program. It doesn't really show our attendance at PM1 program. We have an afternoon program for students who are out of school right now, waiting to enroll. We've had about 6 students who were either waiting to enroll in the PM2 program, or students who are out of their school for a variety of reasons, being tutored in our afternoon program. Also, our cooperative school is a transition program, so we have students who are enrolled presently, but they will return to their sending school. So we had 3 transitioned back to the middle school last term. We are receiving 3 from the middle school at the end of this term, and we are sending another student back to the middle school for this next term that begins the end of January. In West Academy, we have 15 students currently, and we have 2 45-day placements at West, where we accept students from the middle, the high school, or out of district for a 45-day placement. Then they're assessed to see whether they would benefit from being in our program, or if they would go to a different program or back to their sending school. Next. So our school improvement priorities. The first is a supportive learning environment. A lot of our students are disengaged with school, and our job is to engage them once again. So in all our programs, the students haven't always had a positive experience in school, and that's what we focus on first, is making learning a positive experience for the students. We use the benchmark, we use the FAST assessment along with Edgenuity MyPath, which is a new program that we have access to this year. It's an online program where students are assessed in math and in reading. And what it does, it builds a program just for that individual student. So I always ask the students, please take the placement test seriously, because they could be placed at a 4th grade reading level when they're really maybe at an 8th or 9th grade reading level. And we were fortunate this year to receive a gift of $5,000 from Cape Cod 5. We were able to buy 20 Chromebooks. So we use that for online, as well as the classroom teachers in both programs use them daily. Next. So our data supporting curriculum priorities, I used attendance data because what's important with our program is just trying to, as I said before, because the children drive the budget, having them in school is very important for us. So engaging students and keeping them in school is our priority. Next. So our school improvement plan with at a level budget would be cameras. We moved into the East Wareham school. There were no cameras in that building, only cameras on the doors. So we're working to have cameras placed in different areas in the building. With our PM2 program, because the school is open really from 7 to about 7:15 at night, we feel that having a safe environment where there are students coming and going pretty much all day long, that we just need more cameras to monitor the safety of students.
Excuse me, can I just ask a question that, because I don't understand, I mean, I do, I think. Both of these schools currently are in one building. How do you keep the population, or do you keep the population separate?
We do right now. We have, the cooperative school is on the 1st floor, the main floor, and West Academy is on the 2nd floor. We have a different start and end time, so they have different, they actually have a different schedule, different lunch time.
Thank you.
So, next. With minimum school improvement, engaging our students in the school, in the programs that we offer, makes our school safe. So if students are engaged by the consultants or a job coach, what we're looking at is, because we do not have any enrichments to offer our students, unless our teachers, and we have a lot of teachers on our staff right now that are talented and do some kind of vocational work with the students. What we'd like to do is to bring in more of those opportunities and be able to hire consultants for an hourly rate to work with our students, with the teachers. Also, we would like to have a job coach once again to work with the older students in West Academy as well as our PM2 population. This is our staffing for both programs right now, for West and Cooperative School Day. And then is our staffing for the PM2 program. So our level budget maintenance projects are painting the classrooms. I think for the students to feel some ownership in the building and belonging to the school, that we will work with the students in brightening up both programs. And that would kind of go along with hiring people to help with the students. We had a beautiful mural at the cooperative school last year, and so the person that did that for us has agreed to come work with the students and do murals inside the building. And in that way, the students, they're less apt to destroy anything or write anything when they've prettied it up themselves. Also, replacement shades. The shades in that building are pretty old, and a lot of the windows don't have shades, so just having that amount of sunlight come in with them working with the projectors and things, there's no way to darken the room. Next. And then replacement desks, and that becomes under safety. Some of our desks, they're just really old and the edges have come off and they're sharp, or a leg's broken and it tips over, so it's just maintenance. And that's it.
Okay, anyone? Mrs. Vugan.
So I'll start with my last question first. So when it comes to furniture replacement, I said this when Principal Palladino was here too, that most of the big box stores are going towards more of a desire to donate furniture than they are money. And so anything that we can do to apply to or request from them furniture replacements, and we don't have to put that in the budget, I think would be great. The other thing is that we have been talking collectively about capital needs and how we can, look at town-wide around, and this could be another piece around furniture, that if you are seeing similar needs within the town building offices, how can we take a look at capital replacements when it comes to office furniture, and either try to find donations for it across the board, or be able to have a low bid come in and we can replace multiple things at once.
It's a good idea.
The second question that I have is, when you take a look at the enrollment of students for the Wareham Cooperative, what's the breakup between night and day?
Right now we have, well, night school right now is registering, so the population at that time, we had 75 for night school.
So these numbers enrolled students don't include night school?
They do.
Okay. So a total of 75 in these grade levels?
Right. In the day school right now at the cooperative school, we have 15 students. And at West Academy, we have 15 students in 2 45-day placements.
Can you explain a 45-day placement, please?
So a student may be recommended from the middle school or the high school to come to a program for a 45-day. And it could be for a variety of reasons. It could be that the parent wants the child to have the experience of coming to the program and to be assessed after the 45 days of whether the program is suitable for that child or another program might be more fitting. So it could be a behavior assessment. It could be an academic assessment.
Are you all set, Mrs. Whiteside?
I think so. Thank you.
Mr. Lazarus?
Yeah. Well, hog the month, yeah. Kathy, are we still taking kids from other districts in night school?
Yes.
You got a number on that?
I
Now,
do.
they're paying-
Actually,
They're paying tuition for that, is that right?
It's school choice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So last semester we had 18. We registered 6 last night because it's registration period right now. So we've averaged anywhere between, say, 15 and 25.
They're paying tuition.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Mr. Sweat?
Remarkable number. I realize that the classification of the FTEs is not perfect yet, but the actual numbers of people is pretty accurate.
Should be, yep.
Pretty accurate. If I take, Kathy you have 14 total staff, including yourself. That's what this is telling me.
Okay.
Okay? If I take the I think I came up with 105 students for which you're responsible, that's 7.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
My
That's
coach.
that's 7.6 students per FTE. Okay? I know they're not all teachers, one of them is you, but just apples to apples. What's remarkable is if I do that same calculation for the high school, it's only 6.1 per FTE. Now, here we have someone providing intensive services to 100% low income, and in some cases, 100% special ed. In the case of the cooperative, it's not 100% special ed, but it's still
It's high.
almost twice the normal, 35%. So, and the middle school, just by reference, is 8.9 students per FTE. As a numbers data person, I have to react to that. 6.1 for the high school, 7.6 for students who are really troubled. This is why I'm sitting here thinking there's a misallocation. And I know you're looking at it, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but we need to really look hard at some of these numbers.
Mr. McMillan?
I'm just going to say, however, Kathy, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, but there are also, the PM2 program also relies on staff coming in on an hourly basis. So some classes...
So that's 7.6
is low, high? It's high, yeah.
It's high.
Because you
It
increase
should
the
be,
number of staff.
it should be a little lower.
Yeah.
I was surprised it was that high.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Because you need to add.
So,
Yeah, because it's done on an hourly basis depending on the number of students there are and there are staff already in the district.
so what would you guess the total number of FTEs, if you put them all together, of contracted services on an hourly basis might be? How many hours are we talking
Yeah.
about?
How many hours?
The cost to run the program?
No, how many
No.
hours?
How many hours a month of contracted services do you have?
You know, of the teachers who
Yeah.
come in and do extra time.
Right, 4. 48? 48?
48 hours a month?
Right.
A quarter of a person.
Exactly, because 160 is approximately a full-time employee.
Yeah, so that's not much.
It's not much.
Yeah. It wouldn't make a huge, doesn't make a huge difference.
Mr. Lazarus?
Now Mr. Sweat won't fall out of his seat because I disagree with his logic here.
My logic, okay.
And the reason is this. When you deal with the high school, the middle school, and the elementary schools, you're talking about full-time students. When we're dealing with the co-op and West, you're dealing with students that have some split days. Not anymore,
No.
but you have students that are there at night.
Yes,
Now-
our PM2 program.
Right, so you've got your PM2 program, and are all of these students there all the time,
No,
all day?
no.
So you don't have however many students there are from the opening of the school day to the closing of the regular school day.
Correct.
From, say, 7:40 to 3
That
o'clock.
is not a problem of my logic, that's a problem of facts. So, how many full-time
Well,
equivalent
facts-
students?
He's agreeing with you.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
How many full-time equivalent students do you think you have? And if it isn't 105, what percentage are half-time, for example?
We have no students that are half-time. We have full-time day program, and then we have our night school program and an afternoon tutoring program. We have the capacity to have 40 students in those programs. Right now, we have 32
Okay, but
in the day program.
the night program, how many hours are they there?
They're there 3 hours for 4 days a week right now.
Okay.
They do
So
their
that's about a
18-week
half
semester.
a student. Okay, and, well, 4 days a week. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it surprised me, sure. Right. Never really did. Dr. Shaver-Hood, did you make those cookies?
Did you like
They're
them?
incredible.
How many,
Thank you. Thank you.
how many of the students are the night program?
Right now, it's 74.
74
We're
are
re-
half-time.
But we're well, they're full-time students,
No, but they're only there through about 3 hours a week. 3 hours a
The
day,
night.
rather.
correct,
70.
12 hours a week.
correct.
Okay.
Oh, Mrs. Whiteside.
So what kind of credit do they get?
They take
Academic credit?
per semester, they get 20 credits per semester if they're involved in school to career, and they take 3 classes, they can earn up to 20 credits a semester.
On 3 hours a day?
3 hours, 1 class, it's done, and then their work that they have at home.
Which is homework, or is it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anything else you want to mention?
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Thank you.
I would like to add, and in the PM2 program though, we've worked with Beyond School Time this semester, so we've been able to offer a young or new parents group, which has been fantastic. We have 5 young women in that group, and 3 of them have already given birth to their babies, so now they bring their babies in. And we also, this semester, are working to offer some kind of Alateen group for students.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sweat, go ahead.
My colleague here made a very valid point. The 7.6 drops to about a little over 3 students per FTE. So it's dramatically different.
Okay.
So now I have to ask the following question. I didn't expect your productivity to be high, but that's obviously really low. How do you feel about the outcomes of your students? In other words, are you producing students that have the potential to be productive, independent adults?
Yes,
You are.
yes. You've been to the graduation.
Yes, I know.
And it's sometimes the students who are graduating that year don't always go on to community college. A lot of them just go into the workforce at jobs that they've been working at. But I would say we get an average of 1 call a day for a copy of a transcript for a student who's decided to go to school.
So the fact that we're spending 2 or 3 times as much on them in order to produce this, ultimately you say is worth it.
Well, if you've watched Dropout Nation, it costs in the long run about
That's what I'm saying.
$290,000 per student. So, you know, it's funny because last night ended our semester, and a lot of our students are finished in December, but they'll graduate in June. And I got a card from a young man, and it said, "Thank you for helping me not just be another dropout." And I'm like, yeah, this is worth it.
And what's the biggest reason they end up with you instead of with Mr. Minkle and Mr. Palladino?
Well, the middle school is probably behavior, you know.
Behavior.
I think so.
Parenting?
Lack of.
Well,
Exactly.
I don't know.
No,
You know-
you're not sure.
No, I have a very, you know.
So you're a nature versus nurture person?
A lot of our parents are very involved, and they're overwhelmed with other things that have happened in their lives. So it's not that they don't care about their kids.
Thank you.
I was going to let you off the hook, but Mr. Sweat brought it up, and now I can't let it go.
Okay.
We need, again, need to be frank and candid, and whatever you think is an appropriate answer for this, I'd accept. But he asked you how these students ended up at your school.
Mm-hmm.
Last I heard, there was something, I don't know, 40% of them had current probation officers?
I don't know what the percentage is right now, but yes, some of them are on probation.
And a figure I heard from a prior staff member said that well over 90% of them have been adjudicated and found guilty of something at some point?
No, I disagree.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, you know, part of the clientele that we work with, it's our job to educate,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah, that's just how we end up at, how we need this particular school. I mean, you don't find a co-op school at Upper Cape. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm going.
We have students from
Right,
Upper
and they
Cape.
end up
We
coming
have
back.
them come back to us.
Yeah, they end up coming back, I understand.
Yeah, in fact, we've enrolled several students in the last 2 weeks, at least 2 that I'm aware of, that were asked to leave Upper Cape.
Okay.
They've come back to
Yeah,
us.
I
What a
get
nice luxury for Upper
it.
Cape.
Isn't that nice?
Isn't it?
Yeah, catch all. But thank you for your candor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Asked to leave. That drives me nuts.
Okay, we have a few minute break,
Yeah. Well,
do we?
do you want to have a couple of minutes?
Yes.
Can we
Yeah.
take a few minutes?
We're kind of just about on time.
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
can we
sorry.
take about a 5-minute break or a 3-minute break? before
5
we
minutes,
begin?
yes.
Oh, thank you.
Did we have to sign something over there?
All right, so
With great love and affection.
Christian, we're gonna get started
There's a
again.
lunch coming in.
Thank you, Tom. I'm very,
And I guess, Dr. Shaver-Hood, I think you're up with special education.
Yes,
Will do.
we're ready to move. Special education. Michael and I will be sharing this, and Andrea will be jumping in as well.
Mike, when you talk, can you bring the microphone closer to your mouth this time around?
Of course.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, after saying such nice things about me earlier about being here, I do have to leave, so.
I appreciate it, that's great. I'm glad you actually, had some stuff to offer.
Thanks for
about
coming,
buying it.
Derek.
You're gonna buy us some new cameras? And while you're buying all those cameras, get some for the library.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's a library? Absolutely.
The town library. No? You don't need them?
Judy, you'll be shocked that I'm about to be appointed to a statewide commission on school library services, to review school library services. Should be interesting.
I'm not shocked. I told you that Alan applied to be on the Massachusetts Library Commission. They turned him down because he's not a librarian. Well, the horses ask stupid ways of doing business.
I can edit that, don't worry.
So anyway, back to special ed.
And obviously, I didn't get it because I'm a librarian. I got it because Mask was asked to provide a representative.
Right.
So back to special education.
Yes, so what we've done with special education is, first slide, please. We've looked at our students, special education students that are identified in the various schools. So you will see that currently we have 623 students that have IEPs or an ELL profile that come under student services in our district.
Keep going.
Part of what we're looking at is how do we ensure that our students are growing academically that have been identified. We've been looking at one of our dilemmas is making sure that they access the regular ed curriculum. And when we do so, that may mean smaller class sizes, that may mean inclusion classes, and inclusion classes for us means students coming in the regular education classes with accommodations on their IEP. If a student is not able to access the regular ed curriculum with modifications, then they're placed or they're programmed into a resource class. Anytime we make program changes with special education students, it must be on their IEP. We cannot just arbitrarily say we think a student will benefit from this accommodation or modification and make that change without a team meeting and having it fully documented on the IEP. The purpose of an IEP is to identify what accommodations or modifications we need to make for our students and their individual specific. So when we're looking at this is really a moving target for us as far as how do we identify the services we need to provide as a school district that we are legally mandated to provide and make sure that we've done it in an efficient and effective manner. So what we've been doing over a period of time is looking at what services we have, trying to identify where our areas of need are, and that's how we're driving our department improvements. What I can tell you is we see a need to increase counseling to address the whole child. A number of our special education students come to us with some emotional disabilities and certainly a very lack of coping. Thus, it impacts their education. And because it impacts their education, we need to address that. We're also seeing a rise in autism and students that are identified with autistic criteria. Hence, we need to develop our programs in that area, and as well as with behavior support. Next slide. Part of, and I'll turn this over to you, Adrian, because it looks at the MCAS trends and where our students are. It certainly is not acceptable to us that 2% of our special education students place in the advancement category and 16 in the proficient category. Do you have anything to say about that?
It just gives us a lot of information on what to make, on making decisions about what we need to do. It's very telling, this information, for us with this population.
You know, part of last year's reconfiguration with special ed was we looked at the caseloads, staff caseloads. Currently, our staff, and that means team chairs, special educators, well, I'm sorry, not team chairs, special educators work with a population of 16 to 20 students. And what that means is they are responsible, they're the teacher of record, and they work with progress reports, et cetera, and they're like the contact person for parents, for students. And if you'll notice, state average is 18.5. We're also looking at our classroom technology because we certainly know that student engagement and meeting the students' needs, we can use technology to a higher degree. Therefore, we've been looking at assistive technology surveys and how are we going to increase the technology offered to our special education students, but also offer professional development for our special ed teachers. The next slide shows staffing, sub-separate. If you look at DECUS, we have.
Just excuse me a minute.
Yes.
We don't have these, I don't think, do we?
Yeah, we do.
No.
Yeah.
Where am I?
They're in there somewhere.
All right, I'll look.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure, okay.
Currently, right now, we have 3 sub-separate programs at DECUS, 4 inclusionary teachers, and 1.5 counselors that work with our special education students. At Minot, we have 3 sub-separate for inclusion. The pre-K, we have 2 sub-separate and 7 inclusion opportunities. At the high school, we have 3 sub-separate and 7. At East, we have 3 teachers, and district-wide, we have 5 team chairs, 3 school psychologists, 11 therapists, 4 behavior supports, 1 out-of-district coordinator, and a .75 EL person. What I would want to call to your attention, we have a group of students from the middle school who will be moving to the high school next year. Therefore, we need to look at expanding a program at the high school, and that would mean staffing. What we're looking at is there a way that we can move staff around to cover that without an additional hire?
You said we have a group moving there. What do you mean by that?
We have a class of students with a certain diagnosis now moving to the high school.
Okay.
At present, we have not had this at the high school.
Yeah.
Therefore, it would be a new population that they're having to deal with.
And can I just point
Please.
something out on this staffing list, which is we have a part of the budget reductions from 2014 into 2015 was we had a big consulting contractor. We did a big contracted services provider coming in providing special education services in the district at DECUS and at West, and we ended that contract and brought in and employed staff directly to do it, which was a saving overall, and we also think it's more effective. And so it just means that you see an increase in our staff but a reduction in our contracted services. Right, so that might come up.
Areas that drive the special education budget. It's really a multi-layered element. One of the biggest and most costly to the district is out-of-district placement. We have very little control. Actually, we have no control over what the tuition rate will be for students that are placed out of district. We have we have budgeted a 3% tuition projection for next year, and we're looking at a possible $292,653 in additional placements needed. Part of this is we need to look at we're in the process of doing some analysis, looking at where our out-of-district students are as far as what their disabilities. Do we have capability to bring programs into our district that would enable us to bring back students that are placed out of district? And do we have the capability and the capacity? Those are all questions that we're currently exploring. What we can't do is bring back students from out-of-district placements if we're not prepared or adequately equipped to handle and to provide an educational program for these students. What we also know and what we're tracking are trends of what the diagnoses are that we're seeing. Because what we want to do is build capacity and to build programming, so when we have students come to us with these diagnoses, we are able to meet their educational needs in the district, and we're not looking at a $60,000, $100,000 out-district placement.
It was my understanding when we opened West Academy that that's exactly what we had intended that building to be used for. And that we wanted to be able to provide the services to some of these students that were sending out of district to the tune of $100,000 a hit, and service them there. Are we making any progress? Well, maybe I should ask this. How many people do we have in West right now? Handful? 4 or 5?
15.
15.
2 that are
45-day placement.
2 that are 45-day, 15 total. I'm not sure how many of them are not Wareham students.
Well,
So who are
again, West
coming
was set
from
up specifically
other
to try
places.
and minimize our out-of-district placements, and we were going to take some out-of-district kids in based on school choice. And I'm hoping that we're going to go forward with that even more deeply than we are right now.
I believe part of our goal with special education is to provide students with the tools they need, the equipment or the coping skills they need to function in a regular ed environment. When a student is identified for special education, it's our goal to move and to provide them with a sound education, and to provide them with accommodations that we can get them back into a regular educational setting, or to have them move out of special education. I am totally against providing a setting where I do not provide students with those kind of skills.
I guess this sort of dovetails with the 504 discussion. Now, with IEPs, for example, how often do the students come off of those? No? Doesn't happen either? Come on,
I
same,
had 1 in 4 years,
same idea, huh? Same deal? And,
and that was voluntary on the students' part.
oh, jeez.
And a 504 would means to me, if it impacts the student's ability to receive an education, a fair and equal education because of a life-altering situation, then I have the ability, or the school has the ability to make accommodations and have these accommodations listed as a 504. Just because a student has a disability, but if it does not impact their education, they do not qualify for a 504. And I think what we need to do is be very careful about how we place students on a 504. Absolutely, some students need it, absolutely. Other students, you know, there are things that we can do as teachers, as educators, to meet the students' needs without placing them on a 504.
Actually, Mrs. Whiteside had her hand up first.
Sorry. Just to go back to what Mr. Lazarus said, my understanding of West was that it was a school environment for kids who were costing us big bucks because of the private placements. And those would include kids with serious physical disabilities as well as the possibly emotional disabilities. And over the period of time, what the perception to me is that, I'm not going to say this out loud, that it has turned, that it has become something that it was not originally to be designed to be. That it's much more of a holding tank than a progressive educational, not experiment, but, you know, viability.
Warehousing? Warehousing? That's not my opinion.
I think that we have to be rather careful with this conversation because this IEP drives student placement. And the IEP is composed of the school psychologist, teachers, parent, student at a certain age, and that's what drives the programming. Pardon? It could be a doctor, yeah. But what I think we need to be very careful of when we start looking at the existing programs in the district is not to second guess what's going on. However, with that being said, I think it's our obligation to review why we have them. Is it beneficial to students, and are we meeting the students' needs? We are not a therapeutic district. If a student needs a therapeutic setting, it's not in Wareham. We are not equipped, nor do we want to be equipped. We are an educational facility, and that's what we do.
All right, Mr. Sweat?
This isn't my question, but I thought the Schwartz involvement in the West Academy was therapeutic. That's incorrect?
We do not have Schwartz involvement at this time.
But it used to be.
I'm not sure if it was Schwartz, but we did have, it could have been. We did have involvement from another outside agency.
And they were therapeutic, correct?
That's correct.
But that's no longer.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm looking at some numbers and I'm trying to reconcile them. Michael's gone, but maybe you can help me. For FY 12, 13, and 14, we averaged about $800,000 in tuitions to private schools. A little over $800,000 a year. That's FY 12, 13, and 14. Our budget for this year is $1.3 million. And our proposed budget for FY 16 is $1.8 million. That's a staggering amount and a staggering increase. How much of, how, how much of that is cost per student and how much of that is absolute number of students?
Currently, and I'm not sure this is answering your question, so.
Michael?
Yes.
We've gone from an average for 12, 13, and 14 of a little over $800,000 a year to private tuitions for SPED students. This year we're budgeting 1.3 million. Next year we're budgeting 1.8 million.
Yep.
That's a staggering increase. I mean, literally that's $1 million since last year that we're devoting just to private school SPED students. We don't have that money. How has that happened? Is it the number of students have dramatically increased, or is it the cost per student that has dramatically increased?
So it's 1.3 to 1.8.
Yes.
So that's $500,000.
Yeah, but just getting to 1.3 for this year was a big increase.
Oh, right, yeah. It is. So.
I mean, we only spent a little under $700,000 in FY14 was our actual costs. Now, I'm concerned that might be distorted by prepays and things like that. Putting that aside for the moment, we're still talking about a $500,000 increase from this year's budget to next year's budget.
It's a combination of, it's actually slightly offset by the reduction in collaboratives, because that goes down a little bit. And
yes, you're right.
And sometimes it's a only a
modest decrease.
But it's a combination of an increase in costs
What percentage?
per student. 3%.
It's only a 3% increase?
Yep. And then
The state
the
usually
rest-
gives a lot more
Well-
than 3%.
yeah.
So that
Well, we're
suggests that this is
budgeted-
primarily a problem of number of students.
Yeah, so it's the number of students, and then those students have high costs associated. You know, the average cost of the students being increased is high.
Yeah, you're right, there's a third component.
gets-
There's
yeah.
the,
Services, the cost of the
they
services.
need more services,
Yes.
and there are more individual,
And-
the cost is going up
Exactly.
for the same service.
Exactly.
Wow. How many students do we currently have? Are these all residential, or some of them are not all residential?
Yeah, not all residential.
How many students are going to private schools?
52.
There you go.
52 are either residential, small percentage, or being transported
Out of district.
out of district. 52.
Hence, I come
And this doesn't include,
$200,000 a year, or $400,000.
for some students.
well, you can take 1.3 million and divide it by the 52.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this does not include transportation, does it?
No, it does not include transportation.
$260,000 a student.
Average. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Messiah.
But I want to know year-to-date spent. I don't know what your budget is. I want to know how much you've spent.
This fiscal year, you mean?
Yes. No, it's a valid question.
Well, he might, I don't think you'd have that information handy at the moment.
Why not?
Well, he might.
I mean, because it goes back to Jeff's question. If you have budgeted $1 million and you came in at 800, you've budgeted $1.2 million and you've come in at 900, you've budgeted $1 million and you came in at 700. In the words of the proverbial Whiteside, that is fluff, another, that went someplace else.
Michael, how much have we spent to date?
This year?
Yes.
I don't know.
I mean, we do get these reports
So-
in our meetings, but.
Yeah, so in the past, they were able to prepay some side of the district. So there was this rolling, which is a benefit the first time you do it, but then after that, it's a benefit the last time. But after that, because you always have to take it out of your budget. But this year we didn't prepay any of any special ed.
But
So-
Judy's question is still appropriate.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd be happy to go through the list. So I meet, every couple of months with the out-of-district coordinator, and we go review every single student who's out of district, and we kind of categorize them into three categories. One is active. One is they're coming, but they're not active yet. So we know they're going to be active soon. So, for example, they are currently hospitalised and have a date to go out of district. So while a student's hospitalised, for example, they don't cost us anything, but as soon as they are well enough to need education, but not well enough to come back in district, so when we know they're the probable almost, because they're almost definite, because you don't actually know until they're there. And then we have possible, which are the kids who are hospitalised, but don't have an exit date yet. So they're just we are waiting to see if they will come out.
And we have to budget for those, because if not, then they'll be taken, then we would, once they do come into district, then we would have to take that out of a different lineup.
And to answer, I mean, we can get an answer to your question. I don't know about today, but we get bi-monthly reports.
Well, I just would like to know that answer.
Yeah.
Because
What we also look at is worst-case scenario,
Yeah.
we hope scenario, and best-case scenario. And what we've done is we've projected it out to the end of the school year. So we've also are watching our moving target, and we have those projections. So it's not something that we've just taken a blind eye to. We're watching this very closely. The other piece is, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Michael,
no.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it's always so, like, for example, with in FY13, they budgeted 1.2 for private school tuition, but only 200,000 for collaboratives. But then collaboratives were 546. So actually, they actually spent, in FY13. So they had budgeted 1.4 and they spent 1.4. I mean, it's not quite. And then, so it was, and in FY14 there had been some prepays which were then.
Then I think,
So,
in terms of budget presentation, you need to bulk those first
Yeah,
two
yeah.
numbers, because they're very deceiving.
I think what we also could do is go back historically and see how much we've prepaid, how much was prepaid in the past, because it certainly looks like the numbers inflated.
Yeah.
I think Tom's off a decimal point, though. I got 26,000, not 260,000.
Oh, it's 260.
No, it's-
60 cents more right than 26.
It does.
yeah, 200.
It can't be 260 because
Excuse me,
260...
you're right.
Excuse me?
You're right.
Yeah. 260 would be virtually impossible because that's an expensive residential patient. Yes, okay. But putting all that aside, we've still got we've essentially got a $500,000 problem between even the budget. The actuals would be a good number, but to grow a $500,000, which is as a percentage also an enormous percentage, we've got to get comfortable that that's real, because we've got this finite pie to work with, and to put that much into student services as compared to regular services, we got to be really comfortable that that number is real.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, sorry. This is you again.
Question that I have is the number of students that we are servicing, what percentage of them are actually placed by the state and not just residential here? How many are, or just give me top of your head percentage of that total number?
I'd say like
Is it
5% maybe.
Yeah.
So
only 5% of the services that
No,
we're
sorry, 10.
servicing, we
No,
have
maybe
no
like-
control of where the state is placing them.
No, I'd say, sorry, I think it's maybe 10 to 20% are placed by the state.
You need to see it?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's 50
That
kids, so say
basically
5
that there's
to 10.
a student in
Yes.
need and the
So-
state decides that Wareham is a good place to put them
Yes.
instead of
Yeah,
Wellesley
Well,
or
well-
Newton or,
Well, it depends on their foster.
yeah,
There's a lot of variables that are involved, so where their foster placement is, if the foster family lives here
yeah,
versus lives somewhere else.
yeah.
Wherever the land is, who's responsible for cost share. So it's a cost share situation with the state and the district of which that family and the child is located.
Okay. I just wanted to know if it was on the high end or the lower end, so, thank you.
Okay.
Other questions?
Is that it for SPED?
Well, it goes on.
You can go on. Part of what we're doing is we are looking at what programs we currently have, what supports we need to put in place, because we agree we cannot continue to raise our out-of-district cost. In fact, we need to lower our out-of-district cost, but it's going to mean some investment on our part to do so. And so we're constantly searching for efficiencies. We're looking to see how do we meet the needs of our kids. Some of it is out of our hands. Some of it we have no choice about. Others we do. And it's what we have control over is what we're trying to build the capacity. I apologize. I mean, we're not the special ed experts. Dr. Marks, as you know, is out on leave. We plan on her being back mid-January, and certainly will involve her moving forward with other conversations. Yes, Mrs. Watson.
I'm not sure I heard all of what Dr. Schwam said. These are foster kids, these are psychologically damaged kids, these are physically damaged children, and they are up to the age of 22, is that correct?
Correct.
And what percentage of them are foster kids? I
Oh,
didn't know whether
foster
you...
kids, I don't know.
We're not sure, because some of them are not necessarily, some of the students are not placed. For example, they're under state custody, and but their biological families may be living in Wareham, and that's the other part where so there are a number of different issues that come into play once DCF becomes involved with the child. It's a cost share situation, so there's a split in the cost, but it's complicated.
Okay,
It's not necessarily, Mum, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's necessarily foster children. It's just children who are, for one reason or the next, in the care of the state.
It's a number of
But it's
different.
not all foster kids,
Correct.
because some foster children
It's some that
some
are in
of
the
those
care of
are
the state.
have high
Right.
needs are in the care.
And the question that I had is, how many children that we are currently servicing have a tie to Wareham, and what percentage of children have, before they got placed, had no tie to Wareham? And so what I understand is that's between 10 and 12%,
Yeah.
where the state will place them with a foster family in Wareham, or they'll make that tie to Wareham where they didn't have connection before. 85 to 90% of them have already a tie to Wareham.
The foster kids.
It's foster, it's homeless, it's
Yeah.
that there's an issue going on within
Yeah.
the family, but 90% of them, the state only controls 10 to 15%
Yeah.
of who they place in our district.
And then some are also, we have some children go through our system, and then we decide or through their IEP, it's decided that for whatever reason need to go out of district. But some are also, people move into the area. So we'll have no contact with them, and they move into the area, into our district, and they come with an IEP that requires them to be out of district. And we will review the IEP, but sometimes that's
And
just
that's
the
where we have no
service
control.
required.
Correct.
That is of limited control.
I just wanted to thank you for your candor, because I think it takes a lot to say that, we have this therapeutic school, but this isn't, we're not really getting it done, right? I mean, this is not, Wareham isn't the place for you to be in a therapeutic program, right? And that takes a lot to say.
I think part of what we have to look at is, can we meet the students' needs?
Well, that's what I mean, and you're true to your whole interview process. You really do want to put the kids first, and you want to get it. You want to do it right.
Well, I appreciate that, but I also have educators working with me that feel the same way. We're just willing to say, this isn't the best place. We need to meet the students' needs. Now, there comes a time where we have to look at, are we able to, sending a student out of district is not something any of us would like to do, because part of making sure that we have the least restrictive environment for a student is moving them through different degrees of restriction. And for me to start in a regular ed classroom with a student that's not performing up to their capabilities, that is an IEP student, I need to put some things in place to say, does this intervention work? And if it says yes, super. If it doesn't work, then it's up to the educators to say, okay, what's the next step? And let's start tightening the parameter around our student to ensure their success. And we should take them through a level of steps to finally say, we have done everything in our power in our district to meet this student's need, and we're not able to do that right now. So we need outside help, and this is not the least restrictive environment for the student. We can't just go from 0 to 100. And so sometimes that's a process. What we also have to do is look at the capacity our staff have, look at the professional development, because if I have a student, and we have students with some severe needs, but for us to say to a teacher with very little training or very little expertise, good luck, deal with this student, we've set ourselves up for disaster. And so part of what we're also doing is building the capacity we have. It's not going to happen overnight. And that's why getting background information, getting professional development for our staff, and making sure we're equipped to handle that is what we're trying to do what we started doing last year and what we're continuing this year.
And I would vote to be as equally concerned with 140 IQ people and up.
You are
that
exactly
we're
right.
nurturing them.
You are correct.
Yeah. And that's a discussion that we have all the time. We can, in fact, in the last month, I can't tell you how many times I've had that discussion with my staff. I cannot continue to support spending X number of dollars on and ignore my regular ed students. We have to come to where we're level. We just have to.
Mr. Sweat?
And I will tell you that this committee was sold on RTI because, maybe I shouldn't speak for the committee. I was sold on RTI because we were told that the effective implementation of RTI would, over time, reduce the number of IEPs within this system. And we've not seen it.
Please.
Part of the issue is systemic. So you have to have accurate data in order to make decisions to intervene properly. If you are filling out bubble sheets that have to be scanned at central office for 2,900 students across the district, and get those back in a timely fashion to be able to intervene correctly, then that's a problem. So there are I think the idea of RTI and the training that occurred is coming in very useful now when we have a system in place that can gather that information quickly, identifies what the issues are, people are getting in to make adjustments. So
I buy that.
there are a number of,
It's a great point.
so I just wanted to clarify.
If there's no more in special ed,
One more question.
all right, you're going to get the last word in special ed.
Yeah.
All right.
Doesn't special education in fact include the 140 IQ students? Isn't that part of the law? It's not just the kids who have less, it's the kids who have
Never
more.
heard that before.
It's true.
It is. That's a wonderful point. Because I came from a state.
Not the last
Oh,
one.
I mean, it was
No,
that's
no,
the
that was
last
the
point.
last word.
Yeah.
That was the point.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
you
know,
want me to say?
No, I'd love to
anything?
have
Well,
his
no, wait a
explanation.
minute. But what Tom said is absolutely correct. We have been, perception-wise at least, taking care of those who can't. And those who can are being cheated because of the amount of focus that we've put on those who can't, or don't, or won't.
So where is your Genius Academy, I guess is what she's asking.
Should be in every classroom.
STEAM,
Yeah.
another one is the inclusion, or the
Well, hold on,
multiple enrollment,
hold on.
not only at the high school,
Dr.
but
Shaverhood, you were going to respond.
I am. Actually, in some states,
So you get the last word again.
I appreciate that. In some states, there is a provision. If a student qualifies, there are gifted IEPs written and followed. And I worked in a district where we had gifted special ed students, and we programmed for those students. It was fabulous. Massachusetts doesn't do that. Hence, we don't write IEPs for special ed, for
No, but they are
gifted.
part of the act.
Right,
They
and we
are included in
could.
the act.
I'm sorry, what do you mean Massachusetts doesn't do that?
We don't write IEPs for gifted
By
students.
law, by regulation, by what?
We could.
You can.
You mean the conventional wisdom, the standard practice? Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
I know,
I've
it's
just been
hard to
blown out of,
believe.
I've just been blown out of my seat that you would make a blanket statement for the state of Massachusetts.
Can you identify one school district in Massachusetts that writes IEPs for their gifted students?
I never knew you can even get one, but
Let's
I'm
try
the,
it.
I would
I
love
sent the
to do
table for
that.
free 40 years ago. I would love that.
Yeah, out of district
May I?
placement.
By the way, you are right about Massachusetts not writing IEPs. I know it goes back a few years. My oldest son was in a gifted program in Brockton. And granted, that program was segregated from the rest of the school, but there were no specific plans for specific children. I would like to ask a question though. You know, when the IEP is written, it's usually starts somewhere around first grade, and it follows the student all the way through. Are we making any attempt at selling parents on the fact that the student doesn't need it?
I think that we would be not acting in students' best interest if we didn't explore all options. And when I say all options, I truly mean when I look at IEPs, and I've started reading IEPs this year, I get just anxiety ridden when I see cookie cutter accommodations.
Exactly.
And that, and I'm not saying this happens here, but when I look at student disabilities and there's a math disability, but yet in English I'm providing an accommodation, I have to really wonder why. And it doesn't seem to be very efficient or effective use of the time, and it doesn't seem to really be meeting the needs of the kids. So what I will tell you is we are looking at how we write IEPs, how we address the accommodations we offer, and one of my concerns will be when I do not have a person from the LEA, other than a special educator, sitting at an IEP meeting promising district resources, and that makes me very uncomfortable. So we have a number of pieces that we're looking at. I think it would be in our advantage to make sure that we have an administrator or someone who we have entrusted the district resources with to have oversight on how IEPs are written and how we commit district resources. Yes, I'm working on this.
That position exists.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you very
chair?
much. Thank you very much, Dr. Sheba.
Thank you, Mr. Flaherty.
Are we moving on to the budget discussion now?
We have
Which I thought we were, like.
Yeah, lunch.
No.
Right, I thought that was the last word.
We do have lunch for you. I don't know where we're at on our timetable.
We're at Michael.
We have Michael
Yep.
for 11:30.
So we're late.
Actually,
25 minutes.
you're done.
You can
Your time's up.
Yeah, you can skip me.
Let's have a working lunch.
You're all
Yeah.
set.
Yeah.
No, we're supposed to have a working lunch later, but let's do it now.
Okay.
Okay.
With under
What's
Mike's.
wrong for you?
Open her a window.
Yeah, she's a little peaked over here.
Open
Massachusetts.
mic to shut off mic. What do you want?
Shut up, Mike. Let's always sit back down.
So take a break.
Take a break for 5 minutes.
I think Kim just stepped out.
Oh,
All
So
right, you're
But
going.
I think some of the things that you're doing.
Right,
You want me to shut it off?
Yeah, because Kim just stepped out.
All right.
I know they are,
Excuse me.
but you were talking about the top 3 things for a group of kids.
Just adding.
You see the hand on
Good
number 1.
idea.
I know.
How to do is actually share.
Who's going to go, Mike or Kim or?
me, I'll get started. So this is really kind of an overview, a pack of slides to show you where, our budget process, where we are, and how we've gone through this, some of the priorities. And I'm also just got some background information on overall district student numbers, staff numbers, and so on. I know we're a little behind, so I can go quite quickly, but if anyone's got any questions or I'm going too fast, please let me know. So I'm just trying to, some of you will have seen this stuff already. I'm just trying to include this in all our slides. I'm trying to build some, the structure around our process. These are the principles with which we're approaching the budget process: to be transparent, data-driven, comprehensive, and cooperative.
I have no problem with the first 3.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Yes.
I mean, I think that it's important for our guests and stuff, but you went over many of these pieces at a school committee meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But they're just part of our
And budget
overarching-
advisory.
Yeah.
I do it all the time now. It's kind of
It's just, here's
it's
how you
just what I
start
do.
off every single one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
To remind us how we're trying to do it. So the guidelines. This is a you've seen these in some form or another before as well. That we are trying to link the budget process as closely as possible to the educational priorities. That those goals for student achievement should drive the budget process, and that's why we've seen each of the people coming before you has presented their MCAS data, because that's the idea is that information informs or FAST data information they have determines their school improvement priorities, which determines the priorities for their budget. It's about basing budget decisions on what is best for children and students, not for adults. We also obviously want to respect the fiscal priorities of the town, looking at cost reduction, new revenue and programme redefinition wherever possible to make sure that we're using our budget as effectively as possible. We will advocate for significant building capital needs, and I'll come on to that at the end. Trying to be balanced and realistic, and finally trying to get to that place where we're looking at a multi-year financial plan. Very quickly, this is how we will assess the effectiveness of this process.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry.
since we have the advantage of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen and a member of the Finance Committee, do you feel you're operating under a multi-year plan?
We've got to. There's a finance committee, we're pushing.
That started last year?
5-year
That
horizon.
started last year, yes?
I would say so.
Okay.
I think we're probably, both the finance committee and the selectmen are probably waiting for the sort of tweaks that you would expect to the plan to pop up over the course of time since it was developed. I expect that that's going to be reflected in Mr. Sullivan's budget presentation to us in January as well as your own.
Okay, good, thanks.
So I don't think we just developed that for a single purpose, i.e. the override.
Right.
I think we developed it as a foundational guidance document.
Glad to hear it, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Yu.
just since we do have the benefit of having 3 boards here, are there anything in the guidelines that Michael just reviewed? Is there anything that we're missing?
Money. Yeah, other than that,
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't think these priorities are any different than the priorities we talked about last spring in the
No.
development of the five-year plan.
No.
You're all consonant with that.
So we, at the end of this process, and we will come back to you actually and ask for your input onto how successful this process was in terms of timeliness, whether you think your effort and time was well spent, and the quality of the process, the product, in both in terms of engagement, the decision making, and of course the outcome of the finances. So we did meet. We had a workshop with the school committee and the school administration team a month or so ago now, and they identified some priorities such as compliance, particularly with SPED regulations, professional development in the curriculum, also ensuring we have the support services to support our schools, innovative strategies for turning around student behaviour, and looking at efficiency and capital improvement. So that's our budget history. So that shows for expenditure from 2008 to 2014, and then the budget for 2015, which was just below the expenditure in 2014, but effectively a level budget.
Can I just ask a quickie?
Yeah.
Remember
Yeah,
that
go
$480,000 that was at town meeting was outside of the school budget? Is that included in your money there?
That was the money for the curriculum resources, I believe, with the textbooks and.
Oh, for the warrant article? No, that's
Yeah,
not in here.
Yeah, this is
That's
what,
not in there?
this is
No.
what we call our LEA budget, which is separate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, no. That's the answer I think we already knew. But
How are you doing against budget?
This year, we are we are on budget. It's tight. You know, we made a lot of cuts at the start of the year. We've made a lot of transitions. We've moved all the reconfiguration of the elementary schools. So all that's now sort of bedding down. We are where we'd expect to be at this point in the year. There's not much room for movement. Gas prices are low, which is helping with transportation. We have got a contract for fuel, which is giving us some stability. But we don't control the weather, so depending on how the winter goes, that'll have a big impact on where we end up in the end of the year.
You hedge fuel costs?
What do you mean? Do we?
By a contract?
Yes, we started a new contract. The gas is 18 months and electricity is 2 years. That was the best I could get at the time. But we got decent rates, so it's helped to avoid some of the increases that people are going to start seeing soon, I'm told.
How about electricity?
Yeah, 2 years. Electricity is 2 years. Gas is 18 months. All right. So I just as I mentioned earlier, and as you've seen in some of the principals' budgets presentations, what we've kind of been working towards is a level service budget that is the budget increase necessary for the district to continue to provide the current level of education, including meeting contractual commitments to employees, meeting legal requirements, and meeting the needs of an increasing high special needs population. That also involves meeting testing requirements in terms of technology. Then there's a minimum school improvement and significant school improvement. So minimum school improvements are small incremental steps we could take to move forward, as opposed to significant school improvement that would really help us make a big step forwards. So at the moment, where we are at the moment, these are not final figures. These are our drafts.
Oh, sure, thanks.
What you look. Why that expression?
Thank you.
Well, I was just thinking your great leap forward is that precede the Cultural Revolution in China.
That's with your 5-year plan.
Exactly.
So everybody out to the farms. All right. So our level service budget is an increase of around $940,000 on our FY15 budget. So that is also just under 300,000 over our projection from last year, where we thought we'd be, and then there's increases, and we've seen them, and I'll touch a little bit on what is driving the increases for the improvement budgets. But what really drives our budget is our employee contractual obligations, the cost of living increase, and individual members of staff moving up their steps. Costs in the region of $620,000 or more before any other changes are made.
I'm sorry, Michael, did you say why you had parenthesis FY14 underneath the...
Yeah, sorry. That's the FY16 projection that was made in FY14. That's all that means. So we made a projection as part of the 5-year plan for what FY16 would be. Sorry.
Yes, that makes sense.
That was for me to remember apart from else.
Got it.
When we made it. So the budget drivers, we also have, you'll see when the principal from Deacon's Elementary comes, we have student numbers enrolled may require us to add grade 2 teacher and specialist to provide teachers, to ensure we have enough teachers to meet the needs of the students, but also to provide staff with their contractual prep times. Also, as the principal at the high school mentioned, we hope to increase the part-time tech support person at the high school to full-time. Just, with so much technology in the high school at this stage, having a part-time person who's there after hours is not sufficient to support the needs.
Mr. Clarity.
This is
3,000 students, is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, about that.
I've got that. Yeah.
Mrs. Whiteside, thank you for raising your hand. You may go.
Thank you. This is a totally obnoxious comment. We have one IT person for the town.
Yes.
One.
Yeah, that's obscene. I don't know how you do that. But you do.
Well, that's why we all get to do calls and emails about how much our website is terrible.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Right now, the school and the town are talking about how to be able to combine resources around technology, correct?
Yes, I've actually
Yeah.
applied for a grant
Yeah.
that is fostering that relationship. It's competitive and don't know, but it's all about improving the infrastructure with everyone in town to have internet access available to everyone. So we did begin that process.
There's also, just while we're here, I might as well take the opportunity to plug some change in our software. For example, our accounting software will help alleviate some of the pressure on our technical people. So I know the town tech person, Andrew Hill, spends a lot of time supporting the current accounting software, and with better software that might help. And the increase in out-of-district education costs, which we've discussed already. And here this has got a 3% increase, so we are still trying to determine exactly what the increase is going to be. The state decides how much special education providers can increase their prices by. It's generally between 3 and 5%. So I've got this budget offsets. I just wanted to talk a little bit very quickly about what we do to try and offset our costs and how we support and supplement the income we get from the town. Obviously we have grant income, which, as I'll show you, has gone down recently, but Andrea and her team are making strides to apply for more grants that are aligned with our district objectives. We're looking. I think we've applied for something like a dozen grants recently.
I'm managing 13 grants right now.
Yeah, and we've applied for a lot of new grants covering everything from facilities, school security, curriculum, technology. So we're doing everything we can to find grants to support what we're doing.
Are they in those numbers?
No, we don't have them yet. They're all just hopeful.
Oh, they're
They're applicants.
Some are just coming through, some are in process, some were, it's just...
But actually, Judy, to your wider point, in a way, yes, grant income is reflected in our budget request because we have adjusted our budget with expectations of what grants we'll get. So, for example, Title I grant is if I didn't include Title I, the number would be higher. Yeah.
But living on grants is
Yeah. Well, so I guess. So the point is, and the grants will tell you can't use your grants
to. Very strict on where you can allocate funding, and you must use great integrity as you're deciding how to manage that, because you're accountable to the person who's offering you those funds. So it isn't as though it's money you have access to freely.
It's not willy-nilly, and if you don't spend all of it on the specific purpose for which the grant was given, then you can't throw it at something else.
You cannot.
Unless somehow you're very creative and can work it within the parameters of the grant.
So you are allowed,
there's a moral obligation.
Yeah, you're putting yourself out there,
Yeah.
saying, we're using the money for X, Y, and Z, and then you can't.
Excuse me, Mrs. Fugan, may I have the floor?
I have to say that grants are a positive for most districts if they're smart about the grants that they go after, meaning that grants when it comes to supplementing the LEA, grants for staffing, and I would say even for programming, are not the best use of when applying for grants. Like, don't run like the wind away from those types of grants, because I agree with you that those are the ones that get you into trouble. But if you are very, very smart in the type of grants that are out there that are more one-time, and that they have a start and an end, and that the district or the town or the nonprofit has that end goal, then to me, it's basically leaving money on the table. If you do not have a person that is responsible or multiple people looking for those types of grants, then you're basically just running away from money. And those are the ones that we need to concentrate on and stay away from the nice, bright and shiny ones that they're going to give you $1 million, but then all of a sudden it's more of a program that you're trying to supplement your LEA. Forget about the shiny ones. Go after the ones that have a start and an end date. And again, if we don't do that, then we're being fiscally irresponsible of not trying to get as much money into this district as possible.
Ms. Schwam, Dr. Schwam,
That's
sorry.
okay, no problem. I just want to speak to that a little bit in that, as far as grants are concerned, if they're not going to promote the mission of the Wareham Public Schools, I really don't want them. And I don't want to be in a position where we're just going after money for money's sake, as far as grants are concerned, because the system has a purpose, and it's pretty clear what that purpose is. So whatever it is that we do apply for, I look very carefully at whether or not it could be sustained after the grant is over, which is another very important part, because if you're just looking for money in for programming and things like that, the money's gone, the program's gone, and you start again. So there's no consistency across curriculum and anything else that you're doing. So whatever we do, I believe, has to begin with the grant and then be sustained for a longer period of time. It's important.
Mr. Titlebaum.
I agree, and this, this goes back to sort of, I think, the general philosophy that one-time money needs to go to one-time things, not to try to add personnel, not to try to add things, recurrent costs, not to try to build something that you're going to have to then fuel and do everything else. I will say that the CETA office is expanding a position. It's going to be a senior program manager. Part of that person's responsibilities are going to be to look into grants to the extent that there's any available extra time. Perhaps there could be some cross-pollination between what you're doing, what that person ends up doing.
Yeah, I think
and just keep going. And I don't think we can have too many people working on this stuff, even with the limitations we're discussing here.
And I think, if anything, that person and Andrea being able to have, like you probably do with the budget folks in the town, that they're just checking in with each other as they're going through to make sure that, one, we're not duplicating efforts applying for the same grant.
Yeah.
And two, that there could be an opportunity to apply together. Yeah.
And there are grants which look to you to work together with municipal colleagues like schools and police applying for grants together. And
Universities, we've developed partnerships already with universities through grants, which has been very exciting.
Great.
Any more questions? Continue.
All right, thank you. So also just the ongoing restructuring. So although it's primarily done alongside the budget process and we present it and we tell you what we're going to do, we're also just on a smaller scale always looking for opportunities where, for example, with this replacing the SPED consultant contract with our own staff, looking at opportunities to reduce overall costs. School choice, we also receive school choice funds and circuit breaker as well, and I'll just talk a little bit about those shortly. So these are just the level service budgets. So what we're trying to show you here is really give you an indication of how the budget's been spent, some of the projects that will be delivered. They go a little bit beyond the core of our business, and it takes us a little bit further ahead of where we are this year. It's not necessarily an increase on last year. They're not necessarily all additional to what was done in the past. So you can't just take last year's budget and add this total and get next year's budget. But it just gives you a sense of the kind of things we're doing. We would plan to do with the level service budget.
So this is level service, but we're adding or not adding services here?
Well, so some of these items are, although it's level service, it requires us to continue to provide a service, and the demands, what service shoot is required, changes.
So changing the services.
So it changes, but it's the same, it's a movable feast, but it's to provide the same quality and level of education that we're providing this year. Means more than just standing still and doing the same thing again.
Gotcha.
So a good example is on the second slide, where we're trying to buy 300 Chromebooks across the district, and that's extra, but in order for us to provide the level of education that we're providing now, it requires us to invest in technology. And particularly as well, the other part of that is with the park assessments coming in, the high school and the middle school need to be able to have a number of students online at the same time that requires additional infrastructure and computers.
Actually call the governor and say, you want to make us do things, then you can fund them.
Yeah.
Period.
Mr. Chair, I just noticed that the E-rate technology has been expanded by the federal government. by $1.5 billion or something like
Yeah.
that. So that's something we definitely should take advantage of.
Yes.
I think that's where the grant we applied for was driven from.
That's, yeah. But there are also changes, there's a lot of changes to the whole E-rate program, and I'm going to a seminar on it soon, so.
Great.
Feedback.
Okay.
All right, so I'm not going to go into these in too much detail because you've seen or will see most of them, if not all of them. Minimum school improvement. So again, this is the changes or improvements that the principals have been presenting to you, things that they would like to do in order to, they believe will help to move their schools and departments forward. So, you know, these are not, I mean, we're calling them minimum school improvements. Some of them are pretty basic, just to make sure their buildings are safe and secure, you know, replacing gym floor, replacing locks. But, you know, they're not absolutely essential right now, but it would be a minimum school, it would be a school improvement to get on. To some more extensive things at the middle school, they would like to add teachers or add full-time interventionists and minor. And then the significant school improvement projects. So these, and again, you know, I'm not sure every district would call these significant because some of these are fairly standard, but they're not in our priority list, but they would help to move the district forward. The principals won't have spent a lot of time on this because of the shortage of time, but it's really adding some positions and updating some technology. School choice, I just wanted to show, so school choice income has gone up. So grants, this is just up until the end of last year, up to 2014. Our income from grants has gone down, particularly those federal grants. In fact, others have gone up, just the federal grant was so large, you know, as it's tapered off. It's really, and that's exactly come back to your point about not relying on these grants, because as they fall away, then it really hurts. But I think, you know, we've had, you know, variable success with that. But I'm really hoping that some of the work we're doing that will help to push these in the right direction for future years. Circuit breaker, just wanted to make sure everyone understood. Circuit breaker is funds we receive from the district, from the state, to help support our special education costs. So it is based on special education students with a high cost. So once the cost gets, I think it's above 3 times the average per pupil cost, we are then reimbursed at a certain percentage for that costs above that number. The percentage is determined each year by the state. So there's 2 factors that influence how much circuit breaker we get. One is that percentage, but the other one is how much we spent on special education. So getting more circuit breaker does not necessarily mean, just means part of that just means we've spent more money on special education. So it's not necessarily a boon, because actually it means our costs have gone up.
Right.
So yes, of course, it's great to
the
get that money.
formula's wacky. If you have to spend
also
3 times more, you're talking about students that are costing the
over
town probably 50, well, not 50, but $40-something thousand or more to educate. And the more of those you have, of course, the more of this you're going to get.
Yes,
so that's
exactly. So
it's a net loss as you go up in the grant.
And so as people see, oh, it's great, we're getting lots of circuit breaker, well, it's double-edged for me, because it means we spent more.
If they wanted to change the formula so that they gave you money for every dollar above and beyond the normal pupil expenditure, then that would be a fair way to do it.
Yeah, because a good example
more
is
consistently funded it.
That too.
Yeah.
And didn't slash it when the state went into the red. All kinds of stuff.
And interestingly, so we've got some out-of-district costs. Out-of-district students that go for collaboratives, for example, they don't qualify for circuit breaker because the price that they choose. So it's, because it's up. Some of the collaboratives, the cost is around 45,000, but you need to be like 48 to get circuit breaker. So